Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on which location you are dialing in from. We're super jazzed, we're super excited with this particular topic. It's called Transforming Experiences in the Age of AI by Left Shifting UX. And this is a fireside chat between Satyam and I. We'll go through some quick intros. We'll talk a little bit about what we mean left shift, uh, a little bit around the details of what, why, how, and we'll certainly go through some success stories, some things that work, that don't work. But why don't we jump in with some introductions first? And I know this is December. We're towards the end of 2024. Many of us are reflecting on all the things that happened throughout the year. I'm sure many of you in the attendees are trying to plan for 2025 and beyond. We're all in this reflection mode given that it is right before the holidays. So I'll start with my introduction, hand it over to Satyam, and then we'll go through the details of the agenda. My name is Kuldeep Kelkar. I'm a partner at UXReactor. Joined about a year ago, been a designer researcher for the last 25 years. Recently published a book, which is why you see that fancy background behind me. The book is called Strengthen Your User Research Superpowers. And we'll talk a little bit about UXReactor in a minute. So let me hand it over to Satyam. Satyam, your introduction, please.
Absolutely, Kuldeep. So I'm Satyam Kantamneni. Again, whatever Kuldeep's experiences minus 1 year. So he graduated 1 year before me. So, been on this line for quite a bit. Actually, Kuldeep and I were co-workers at PayPal, where we both were leaders, and he led research, and I was leading a couple of design teams. And then from there, ended up going into again, leading design teams at other software companies, and then co-founding UXReactor about 10 years back with my brother Prasad. And it's been an interesting journey. Our intent was to, when we founded the firm, was how do we ensure that design is a business driver and not something that's a business supporter. And that's been a foundational intent, and we have been continuing to be in that path. And today's topic is still related to that. So again, in that phase, for the last 4 years, we've been the fastest growing UX firm in the country. So on the Inc. 5000 list, also in the San Francisco Bay Area. So it's been a fun time, and I look forward to having this conversation with all the attendees here, as well as Kuldeep. I think you and I are very passionate about this topic.
Yeah, so sounds great. Thank you, Satyam. And yes, as Satyam mentioned, we work closely together almost 2 decades ago, 15, 18 years ago, and we continue to work with each other. So we clearly enjoy working with each other. So why don't we jump into the topic at hand, which is transforming experiences by left shifting UX. Right, so I'll just go through 3 or 4 slides to illustrate what we mean by left shifting. And then I'll stop sharing my screen, and we'll just talk about some success stories, some challenges, and so on and so forth. Yeah. So sharing my screen. What do we really mean by left shifting UX? And so for a while, UXReactor has talked about this 5D product development life cycle. Initially, the upfront discovery and definition, followed by the design and development, and then deployment. We're not talking about waterfall. We're not talking about agile. Any initiative generally goes through these 5Ds and out into the market. Maybe you work for SaaS companies. Maybe you work for large enterprise organizations. Maybe you work for small startup companies. Really doesn't matter, because someone somewhere is trying to figure out what problem are we trying to solve, what product, technology, or solution do we build to solve that problem, and then launch it to make sure that there is a product market fit. Or if there is a product market fit that's already exists, how do we enhance it, and so on and so forth. Now, left shift is, by the way, not a new concept. Engineering teams have talked about left shift. DevSec and other teams within the engineering organizations have talked about left shift. What we really mean here is that if you or some organization has design research resources, and if 100% or near 100% of your effort goes into solutioning, or are we solving the right problem, if your efforts are largely focused on wireframes, visual designs, crafting that UI, validation testing, then most of the effort goes into this design and development, because someone else somewhere has defined what the problem is, how we're going to solve it. And by left shift, what we really mean, and for the UX aspect, is to take some of those effort and some of those resources from the design and development, and conduct some of the activities that I'll talk about in a minute in the upfront discovery and definition, which then, at least in our point of view, helps with speeding up the design and development. Right? If UXers with the right skills and toolkits can provide tremendous value in the upfront discovery and definition, then it actually, in our experience, helps speed up the design and development process. And we'll talk a little bit about that. Right? We understand that most of our work happens in the design and development process. We're not saying, hey, stop doing the design work or stop doing design validation. That's important. That's critical. But figure out what the right percentage is for you and your organization to start helping the broader org, start helping product leadership, start helping technology leadership, maybe start helping the business in the upfront discovery and definition. Yeah? So it's essentially share shifting some of this to the left of that product development lifecycle. We envision that in 2025 and beyond, given where generative AI is right now, it might provide a whole range of efficiencies in the design and development process. And we'll talk a little bit about it. And I'll certainly ask Satyam about his point of views. But that efficiency gain can then help organizations be involved in the strategic work in upfront discovery and definition. At least at UXReactor, we have historically thought of this work in three swim lanes. And what is the experience strategy work? What is the user research work? And then what is the design work? Uh, Almost everyone in the audience, if you're a product manager, if you're a technology leader, maybe you're a designer or researcher, most of us are very familiar with the workflows, wireframes, visual design, maybe usability test. But as you can see, it's an eye chart. There's a whole range of activities that designers and developers can be involved with. And in the discovery and definition phase, it's more ambiguous work. It is persona development work or refinement work, or bringing the vision that somebody else might have stated to life through experience visioning. Uh, and honestly, in the last 12 to 24 months, and Satyam can talk a little bit about it, at UXReactor, we certainly have seen a lot more work around customer journey mapping. We've seen a lot more work around that experience roadmap. So the upfront discovery and jobs to be done types of interviews. And we have lots of researchers who are literally, as we speak, Jamie was supposed to host this call, but she is in the upfront jobs to be done type of field research, and she's conducting that to help define the problem, which we can then eventually design and develop against. Right? And so this is our playbook. You certainly can use this type of a playbook to move your effort more in the, as I said, shifting some of that effort to the upfront discovery and definition. So that's what we mean by left shifting UX. I'll pause there, hand it over to Satyam. Satyam, your thoughts. What have you seen at UXReactor? What have you seen across the industry around this?
I think I'll answer it in two ways, right? So it's fascinating when you run a consulting firm because you get to see a lot of different organizations working at the same time. And I would say that's the biggest difference while being in-house, where you're kind of trying to struggle with your own problems, business and design. And then you work in a consulting context and you're like, immediately are like able to contrast in the same week, 3 or 4 different engagements. And one of the biggest issue is the angst that comes in, and again, you and I keep talking about it. is organizations that have been putting a ton of money, time, effort, and not realizing that they're getting the impact for that. And then we quickly go back and have those conversations like, yeah, you have put the people, you have put the process, you have kind of done multiple sprints of design and engineering and so on. And the problem always comes down to like, did they know what the right problem was? Did they know what they're going after? I always say, half jokingly, that if you're competing with what your customer is building, you're competing with no one. You need to compete with your user and making sure that you know their journey and you know what pains they have. So you constantly are solving that. Now, that is a left shift mindset. And many organizations think left shift is going to be a process that's going to take a while. In the pursuit of today's release, many organizations or today's features, many people kind of forget the portfolio investment of left shifting, and then they obviously pay for it a few years down the line because it is a long-term investment. But anyway, left shifting is, as we notice at the same time, are companies that are investing in the left shift process of let's keep experimenting, let's keep understanding the problem. We have seen that they have built billions of dollars of value. So again, it's very interesting that you can start seeing how one plays better than other. While, as you said, 70% of your energy needs to go into building the today's problems and today's solutions, but that left shift actually has a significant telescopic effect. So again, that's something that we have seen more and more and more and more companies are asking that. It's actually a fascinating time frame, even in the context of AI, which I would love your perspective on, because as in the right shift side of this side, there's a lot of AI and a lot of disruption going on there. But again, the left shift is here to stay, and for companies that really want to make an impact.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Satyam. So in these days, no group meeting, no webinar, no article can be published without addressing generative AI. Right? We all are thinking about it. We're all talking about it. The typical Silicon Valley and the broader technology conversation revolves around generative AI. Removing all the hype and the fluff out there, the here and now, and at least the things that we can see is that there is, I'm a firm believer that there is a efficiency gain that is going to show up in the nature of our work. So if I think of user research, I mean, hey, there was lots of planning. There is the conducting part, there is the analysis, there's the reporting, bringing the organization together around the what, so what, now what actions. And this generally takes 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I mean, if I go back 20 years, every research study took 6 to 8 weeks, and it was a long cycle because everything was moderated, everything was in person. We already have, long before AI, we already have seen those cycles compress right down to a 2 week unmoderated study powered by technology. I would expect the same thing to happen with generative AI, where AI can absolutely help researchers speed up the definition part of a research study, or the research planning part of the, even potentially moderate sessions. We know for sure it helps during analysis. We're already seeing those efficiency gains with analysis. I mean, generative AI is fabulous. It can ingest transcripts and spit out its conclusions. Like good researchers, we're always skeptical about it. We want to thoroughly vet it. We want to make sure that it narrates the story we want to narrate it. But it's already doing that for card sorting and tree tests and for ingesting transcripts and so on and so forth. And more of that will happen. On the other hand, design tools are all coming up with, I mean, we all see demos. You describe what you want and it spits out a wireframe. It even spits out a visual design, and today's technology is probably going to be the worst. Tomorrow's is going to be better than today's. And so we envision more and more of UI design, visual design, validation user research to have a lot of efficiency gain. What that means is either everyone in the audience are taking that capacity and deploying it somewhere else, or doing more of the software building. It could go either way, but certainly AI will have a profound impact over the next 5 years. None of us, including me, can predict exactly what will happen, but we're sure it will lead to efficiency gain. It will lead to newer skills required to be able to bring together the organization, address the which problem you are trying to solve and how. Any thoughts from you, Satyam? Anything to add there?
No, I mean, again, if somebody thinks that AI is pokey science, I think they are living under some cave somewhere. AI is here front and center. I think what I would say is you don't judge AI by today's value. This system is kind of evolving, just like, I would say compute has evolved significantly. I mean, every year compute doubles, and the same way AI is only going to get more and more effective, and it's here to stay. And as you called out, efficiencies are everywhere. Now, how do you bring those efficiencies into the system? How do you harness it? That's kind of where I think at least the next couple of years will kind of really become more important. But as you said, coding, design, validation, experimentation, variation creation, all those things are actually now going to get hyper efficient. However, what is interesting, again, from a UI level, if somebody calls themselves a UI designer, I think you need to kind of rethink through that aspect, because all of UI is going to be readjusted. If somebody is a programmer, that will get readjusted. The other day, somebody sent me a Python script. I've never coded in Python, but I went to ChatGPT and I said, "This is what I need to do. How do I work through this?" In less than half an hour, I could actually unravel the script, and then it did most of the work for me. So effectively, that's where it is now. Again, if somebody's going to build systems and tools around it, it's not low code and no code. It's effectively, you think about it and it'll automatically happen. So it's basically text. A lot is going to happen there, but that is the environment we are working in. The more important thing is knowing what way you want to leverage this, knowing which problems you're going to harness this on. And I think that continues to be the big issue, because yes, I mean, everybody can code and everybody can write features and build designs, but for what? And shouldn't you, is actually the more fundamental question, which is obviously what we are talking about today. But Kuldeep, I wanted to ask you one quick thing. Are you still seeing resistance in the market as we are working through this and AI, or what's your, as you've been working and supporting engagements?
Yeah, good question. Resistance. Sorry, before I answer that, I am seeing that some questions are starting to trickle in. So for everyone in the audience, feel free to type your questions, and we'll after we go through our conversation, we'll try to address as many questions as we can. So Satyam, to answer your question, am I seeing resistance? I'm not sure. What I'm hearing is a combination of wow, this is amazing, as well as anxiety. What does this mean, right? And people go through this cycle of anxiety as well as excitement simultaneously, right? And that's acknowledging the truth, right? None of us really exactly know how the future is going to unfold, but there are certain signs that are very, very clear, and examples that you gave, which is efficiency gain. So, I mean, if there are people that are actively opposing it, I would probably recommend not to do that. Try to find a way to gain those efficiencies yourself. And given that this talk is about left shift, right, we're not suggesting that because something gets automated, everything gets automated. We still have to figure out, somebody still has to figure out what questions to ask. Someone still has to, I mean, I have not found any AI. AI is fast, humans are slow. There are still lots of people, lots of organizations need to bring people together. There's always an alignment challenge across product development lifecycle. I don't know right now the given AI how we'll solve those human problems efficiently through AI. So AI will be generative AI in particular would be good and continue to be good at outputs that humans have asked for it, at least for the foreseeable future. Don't ask me 25 years from now, and this agent is talking to that agent. I mean, that's a future that I don't know how to envision. But over the next 5 years, it's still, and I envision we as key design leaders and UX leaders and researchers and product managers and technology leaders are going to have to ask those questions and work with each other and the technology will be efficient. Right? But by the way, I heard something interesting new, and I have a question for you, Satyam. This weekend, I was at a discussion forum where I heard this term called rather than engineer or software engineers, people are predicting that it would be software conductors. Why? Because more and more companies are seeing that the software engineer in the past had to write every line of code, that every command, every function, everything had to be manually written. These days, at least the smart engineers and across all organizations are are becoming what they call calling software conductors rather than the engineering stuff. They're asking generative AI technologies to create things. And many of these large organizations are seeing 25%, 50% of their code written by generative AI. There's still humans involved. They're still trying to make sure that it's written appropriately, that it's doing what they're asking it to do. They're debugging it, but it's the co-pilot mindset, right? The aircraft is still flown by a pilot, but there is a co-pilot, and technology is pretty much driving most of it. So maybe that's the future. Who knows? So this software conductor was an interesting term that I heard. Maybe there is a design conductor. Maybe there's a research conductor. Again, go back 100 years or 200 years or 500 years. None of us are these days pulling people through their muscle power. Steam engines and everything and electric engines and are driving is the power, but there's still a conductor that is managing it all. And so maybe that's the future of software development. So long answer. Satyam, your thoughts around back to the left shift, AI's impact, but more so, what benefits would an organization see if they can successfully take some of the UX resources from the design and deploy them in the discovery and definition? Uh, what benefits do you think? Have you seen success stories where that has worked?
Absolutely. See, again, uh, as you called out the 70, 20, and 10 ratio of saying like, hey, you should be spending 70% on doing it, and then about 20% in defining it, and then about 10% in discovering it, right? So that's kind of what I would say is a lot of time that 70%, that ratio of movement automatically is now enabled through the power of AI, because AI allows you to be so much more efficient. In fact, I would say it's not only 30% efficient. In some cases, we are seeing as much as about more than 50%. So there's more to kind of give to that team. So that doesn't mean that you have to cut people. That means that those people can now be leveraged for more higher end or deeper thought. Now, organizations, I'll tell you this, the value that comes in, again, we are in the business of delight, right? That means in the world of user-centered design, we are in process of like, hey, knowing your user and making sure we are delighting them. And delighting then comes from knowing what problems we should solve for them, making sure that we iterate and kind of think through that, making sure that, the best of technology is coming together to kind of make that happen. The best experience is no UI, right? And so again, these are all, but you have to experiment around it. So that means you're putting engineering resources, design resources to iterate on it. That means you're also identifying, where do I create delight? Which are the points of view? Again, a classic thing that we all understand is like, you can go and do user research, but what they say and what they do and what they are thinking and feeling is very different. And how do you kind of still, so there is still that human element of going and sitting down with them, observing them, as you said. I mean, the co-work, Jamie was supposed to be here today moderating this, but she's actually in hospitals and SoCal trying to figure out how doctors and operators work, but in their environment. That AI can't do yet. I mean, it can get to it whenever we get to that point. But at this point, at the next at least 3 to 4 years, that observational element of what they're saying, what they're not saying, uh, exactly to the point that you called out, which is, I used to run design at a large software company, and as much as my team would try to focus on building ease of use, our customers did not want ease of use to be figured out, because they build their business models and they build their capabilities around complexity. They said because they could figure out complexity, so they had a job and a role. So, and if we made it easy, then, they felt that their identity was getting challenged. So again, these are nuances that, so we have to work around that and design around that. That's again a left shift. How do we get delight for them? Not by making it easy, by actually doing other things that they can make, look better and greater. These are all small, subtle things on change management. But these are all things to identify on the left shift. And that actually is what's going to make that product and software or system successful on the highest level. Again, the power that you are getting in AI should be leveraged here. And when you do that here, you effectively are doing better, is kind of my opinion as we kind of work through this process.
Yeah, so somewhat related question. Every time I talk about left shift with teams, either researchers, designers, I think people generally go, "Oh yeah, that makes sense. We absolutely want to do it." They feel, "Hey, left shift might be a new term that they might not have heard," but we UXers being involved upfront in the design, prior to design discovery definition process as a concept is not new concept, and many teams have tried to do that. What they generally ask, and I would like to ask you that question: if I'm a UXer, if I'm a designer, if I'm a researcher, how do I convince stakeholders, my product leaders, someone who is deciding the overall time frame? How do I convince them that UX skill sets are important in the upfront discovery and definition? Any tips, tricks, what works, what doesn't work?
So yeah, yeah, I think UX as a profession is an adolescence. So I don't think many people are looking for UX skills. I think the unfortunate aspect of this line is people think of UX equals to UI.
Hmm.
So they in their mind they're not thinking of what would UI people be doing in my context, and that's kind of still the mindset. Now, how can experience actually, as a larger thing, build my business and kind of engage? So I think the first and foremost thing is people have to reframe it around what is the impact of good or bad experience.
Hmm.
But it doesn't matter whether you're a UXer or you are technologist or a product person or whoever it is. I mean, and eventually it is what is the impact of experience on business. Is better experience going to have better retention, satisfaction, efficiency, engagement, whatever those variables are? And
Yeah.
then you kind of work through that aspect. Because most business leaders are not going to look for a department. Most business leaders, unfortunately, don't even know they have a research team that effectively is constantly looking at stuff because they think, yeah, we are validating our products, but they're not even thinking of the perspective that there's a research team that can tell them the top 5 pain points for users at any given point of time. Market research is better understood in the C-suite versus user research, and that's the nature of it. I think we should just call it the way it is. But the fact is, the data that is coming out, the synthesis that's happening, the experiments that are being run have to be kind of correlated back to how does that relate to business? And I think that's the foundational shift. As people are going to the left shift, everyone thinks right shift is happening, design is going on. Many people I keep telling this, I was in a flight with someone, one of the CEOs, and the CEO's like, I said, what do you do? I said, I'm a UX designer. And they're like, oh, I have a few of them in my company. That's kind of his reaction. It was not like, hey, I have like, it's a commoditized model in their mind. But again, and I can correlate to what they were thinking in their mind. But the larger question is we need to really think about how does what we do when we left shift impact the bottom line, impact the user, and so on and so forth. And that if we can't have that conversation, then we effectively are back into being, the UI people that are going to make things beautiful and better and effective.
Yeah, so if I summarize that in my own words, which is UXers have to get better at talking the business language, right? Understanding the core dollars and cents of and the economics of the business or the product or whatever, be able to have the wider influence, not just the UI, but the overall system, the technology challenges, the competitive situation, whatever it might be, so that they can overall gain that influence and the so-called seat at the table, so that they can insert themselves in the conversations where that upfront discovery and definition is going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kuldeep, related to that, there's actually a question that's come up here. I'll just read it out. It's from maybe it says, what skills would you say researchers need to develop, expand to meet the needs of future AI assistant UX research?
Yeah, good question. Um, I mean, I've spent the last 2 years pondering this question, even without thinking about AI, just in general. Um, I've seen a lot of researchers that are good, that have really good craftsmanship when it comes to defining the research plan, conducting the research plan, methodologies. They're well versed. They have good skill sets around analysis, potentially even reporting. That doesn't mean all those good researchers end up being great researchers. And so, what is this delta between really great researchers and good researchers? Um, and it probably so every organization that I have worked for, and in my consulting role, I've seen probably between 50 to 100, maybe more organizations closely. What ends up happening is that individual researchers that are really good researchers and know how to take the organization with them, how to deeply engage technology people, deeply engage business leaders, definitely deeply engage with product leadership or IT leadership. Uh, UX and definitely research is not an individual sport, it's a team sport. And your ability to take the team with you in the direction that you want it to be is the difference between that great and good. In the last few weeks, I've spent time with some educational institutions. Given that I recently published this book, it's 52 superpowers, 52 skill sets, essentially, to that make a researcher move the researcher from good to great. And my conversations with educational institutions, master's programs, they all teach how to conduct research. Right? 6 months are spent on hypothesis testing and different types of stats methods and how to write scripts and tasks. That's all good. It's necessary. But successful researchers in the industry do a lot more than that. A whole lot of overtime is spent in it. How does AI connect to all of this? Well, it just keeps bringing these soft skills to the forefront because I don't know ChatGPT or any generative AI as a itself has a lot of soft skills, right? It's just right now sitting there waiting for someone to ask a question, and that might be true for at least the next few years. And agent AI and other things might change it, but still, the to answer that question, it is the soft skills. AI can help you with conducting research, with the other details of the research. But how do I convince a stakeholder what methodology to use? How do I convince a stakeholder on how do I want them to make some change? That's still the soft skills, and bringing people and running workshops, and so those are the skills that would make uh, researchers successful now and definitely in future.
Absolutely. The one thing I will kind of repeat, or what resonates with me a lot, is how the data is synthesized and everything that actually will get highly efficient. But what you do with the data, how do you kind of leverage that? I often, joke with researchers on the team. I say, go watch Zero Dark 30, which is a movie about how the Navy SEALs took out, Osama bin Laden. And I say, go watch that and tell me who's the most important character. Uh, and uh, and it's fascinating. And I actually say, for spoiler alert, there's an intelligence analyst in there, who basically identifies, puts her as a very junior intelligence analyst. She connects the dots, kind of says that this is where I think there's a possibility. And she basically puts her neck out there saying that, I believe this is what it is, and then goes out there. And that is what the thing is. Knowing what problem to solve is way more important than sending in a whole army of people there. And that is actually what is, what you do with that research is way more important. And I think the hero of that process or is actually that person who started that analysis. Again, no answers like these, but researchers are, I believe, what that person is for many organizations because they're connecting the dots and identifying the pieces.
So another question that came in is somewhat related. So let's say I'm a product leader or I'm an executive. I have a back to your airplane example. I'm the CEO. You're next to me. We're chit chatting, right? And I know I have UX teams, and I'm super jazzed with this left shift thing. What should I expect from my design team, my research team? Right? What should I ask from them? What skills should I expect from them?
See, I think I've often, as I wrote my book, and I was in the speaking circuit, I would keep repeating this four question test. And the four question test is at any given point, if the organization can tell you who are the top users, what are their top pain points, what are you doing about it, and how do I know I've solved it? And if that four can be articulated very clearly by anyone, and everyone in the organization is kind of aligned on what those are, you have a highly customer-centered organization. Now, what do you do with the CEO? You need to kind of, the CEO is talking about this. The first question is exactly that. Who are my top users? What are their top pain points? And what are you doing about it? And how do I know I've solved it? And so that aspect is where now that is all a lot of left shift is knowing who your users are, what their pain points are. You should know why they're going to competitors, etc. Now, the other variable in this that I add is an organizational level. This has to kind of be spread. When we say empathy, empathy is not for one person to feel. It's for the whole organization to feel. That's when the whole organization is activated. In today's world, when you effectively have engineers across the world and products are being built for somebody else in a different part. Again, as we design some healthcare experiences or automotive experiences, we very quickly realized that people in Ukraine or Eastern Europe or in India don't have the same healthcare experiences that the people in Western hemisphere have or automotive dealership experiences. So you need to now kind of extract that data, synthesize it, experiment around, and then share that with thousands of engineers or product managers on the other side. So if the leader is asking me that question, the fundamental thing is you need to have a conversation around that side. Who are the users? What are the pain points? What are we doing about it? How do we make sure we keep going at it? Because you keep know your customers and you keep giving them delight, you will automatically see the bottom line kind of move forward. That means now the problem becomes like, can you tell the world that you can solve the problem? It's a marketing problem. Or can you start selling it fast enough and can you build pricing models around it as well? As long as your quality is well built on the product side, everything else will kind of build around it. But anyway, long story short, I would say that is the deeper conversation there. And if you're not having that conversation and you're saying, hey, I got 5 requirements and I'm designing those requirements and I did a beautiful design around that requirements. I mean, I don't think the CEO will care or anybody will.
I'm putting myself 20 years ago as an individual contributor researcher. If the CEO asked me those 4 big questions, I don't know I would know the answers to those. And I mean, I would have a general point of view, but I would not have spent my brain power asking those fundamental questions. Actually, I go back to my first job 24 years ago, and I didn't know, worked for a semiconductor industry, didn't really know who the top customers are. Had no idea what their big pain points were. Um, what are we doing about it? Didn't really have the larger view. And so it took me a while to A, figure out that those are the questions, and B, how do I get to those answers? Because they're not always evident in large organizations. Um, cool. Uh, yeah,
Even
go
from
ahead.
HR perspective, right? Left shifting is not a design and a product thing. Like, how do you onboard somebody and how do you get them to think these bigger questions effectively? I still remember when we were at PayPal that, onboarding for me was like, here's $50 and go buy some items on eBay and then pay on PayPal. And I'm like, oh, they gave me $50. So that's what I was thinking. But effectively, they were making me sensitized. And I felt that was a really good onboarding process. And that quickly could, okay, now and then because I ended up running the dispute process at PayPal, and I'm like, if the item didn't come and I had to dispute it, I got through that whole process and I put myself in other side of the market, other side of the aisle. Again, something that Zappos has done really well. Zappos actually makes everyone listen to customer service calls. I don't know if they still do it now under Amazon, but when they were doing it, they were one of the most successful and the most loved brand there. And everybody, irrespective of whichever department you're in, you would have to come in and listen to customer service calls for the first week. And then they would give you an option to say that, hey, this is not for me, and you can take some money and get out. Or you say now, even the head of finance or whoever it is, whatever level, whatever function, you effectively get highly energized around empathy, and then you work on that. That's again left shifting. You kind of start getting into, are we solving the right problems? And that is such a profound shift that it brings in, and not only design but everything.
Yeah. One more question that came in, which is objections, right? So if there is a desire, right, and so let's get say I get inspired based on this talk, and I want to what objection should I expect from executives or from leaders or things like, hey, we thought you guys were already busy with all the design and the research work, and I think you guys don't have the capacity to engage in this upfront, or the concern from executives might be, hey, whoa, you're talking about doing all this upfront work. Who's going to do the actual design and design validation work? So what should I expect from an objections standpoint? How do I handle those objections, and what would my thought process be if I want to do this at my company?
So there's a lot of objections that come, right? So I think resistance comes in so many different forms. One of them is obviously, if, who's going to keep the lights on today if you're going to focus on tomorrow's lights, right? So that's one objection that you always get. The other thing is like somebody else is doing it. Like then somebody else could be market research, somebody else could be the strategy team, somebody else could be the product team, whichever. And now both these objections are these are the top objections that come in, and the which is so let's take each one separately, right? So the objection around who's going to keep the lights on today if we're going to focus on tomorrow's. Uh, Again, the power of AI is like you need to do this, and you need to find a way to kind of get yourself into that door, because one thing we have noticed is once left shift happens and value is created, it's very hard to go back. It's very hard to unsee the value that it creates, because now you're asking, and we do this with multiple times when we do workshops, and people are like, why did we not do this a year back? Like, why did we not ask these questions together? And I'm like, I mean, I guess now you should, but it's very hard to unsee it, and then now that becomes the new muscle. The second thing of like somebody else is doing it, actually, I think that is the biggest blocker. Like, yeah, somebody's doing it, you just do what you have to do today. It actually brings two different symptoms of that. One is if is someone genuinely doing it in a competent way. If they are, then why are they not percolating it all the way in the organization? So that actually is great work that's not getting percolated. So that's again that somebody has to think through, because some of the people here could be that somebody. And the other side is if it's not getting done, then again, are you taking directions and focus around what is the problem with which you are not sure of? If you are not completely in belief of the problem, then state it that this is not the right problem. Many people say they half-heartedly kind of start going at solving the problem, so that effectively also kind of is more inefficient, because not only have you taken that somebody's definition, and that somebody unfortunately is the CEO, the founder, the highest ranking person, get there. I think this is what the user wants, or some other company did this, and you end up kind of catching that up. So again, that is where the danger of the objections for this is on the highest level. Um, Kuldeep, one quick question around that objection side, right? So as you've done some research and you're working with some companies where they've never spoken to users at so much more deeper sense. And I would love to understand your perspective when they actually make that shift around the left side, and what changes in an organization, or what are the shifts that you've seen with different teams that you work with?
Yeah. Good question. And I actually loved your framing of the somebody else is doing it, or you do your job, or who's going to do it. So I love that framing. The third thing that I'll add, which will also answer your question, is that it's people that have been involved historically in discovery and definition. Could be the strategy folks, product leadership, could be marketing leadership, could be just the C-suite of a company. Historically, it's not wrong. I mean, many of these executives have grown through the ranks, and they understand the market. They understand they have strong convictions um, and so on and so forth. Which is why so many companies are successful just through that visionary leaders. But what designers and researchers bring to the table is this unique skill set of deep understanding of the problem, and then be able to communicate it in a visual fashion. So to answer your question, every time we have involved ourselves at UXReactor in the last few years with companies where they go, yeah, we were always talking about this, but we never got together in a workshop like this. to ideate. We didn't never really visualize the solution. We never created the, or different executives had different ideas in their mind, but it was never truly prototyped. We talked about a proof of concept, but that was a more of an engineering POC, which took like 6 months. We didn't do anything within these 3 days to visualize the solution, or at least put a stake in the ground saying that this is our vision. And so, uh, for anyone in the audience, if you have participated in the upfront discovery and definition, or done upfront research, or have participated in workshops, do everything you can to help the larger organization visualize the problem, visualize the solution. Satyam, as you know, I will oftentimes say, show, don't tell. Just don't, because every other skill set, they are only talking about a whole bunch of things. Don't be yet another person who just talks about the problem or talks about the solution. Let's use our craft to help the broader organization visualize that solution, whatever it might be. Or if it's in a workshop, start sketching, right? Visual note taking. There's a whole slew of activities that uh, non-UXers are not exposed to because they haven't seen us in action.
It's a very, very valid point that you made, Kuldeep. I would, and I think in bringing in the power of AI here right now, it's like one of the things that some techniques that we've been using is obviously storyboarding, right? And rapid iteration and prototyping, right? So, for example, we have a conversation like, "Hey, what if?" And that "what if" conversation is something that comes in a lot of times. So, once you know who your user is, what the pain points are, now how are you solving it, can be a lot of what ifs and ideation. Each of those what ifs can effectively be, with an AI. I mean, I'll be very surprised in 6 months if there's not a storyboarding tool that comes out from the, one of the GPT engines, where you effectively say, "Hey, can you storyboard this particular scenario and use case?" And effectively you get a beautiful storyboard that effectively people can correlate and understand, which previously was you had to go find an illustrator to kind of go and drive that. So this is where the power comes in, that you have an idea, you can quickly put it into a concept, test that concept out, and then come back and say, this is going to work or not work. And again, these are all small, fast things that will kind of become more efficient. And then you can validate those problems and concept test them before you actually kind of go and detail design it and kind of go at it. And that's the power. I mean, as you said, you need to show me something. And that show is actually now becoming more powerful with the AI shift also.
Agreed. And actually, I was playing with some custom GPTs that allow for, there are some storyboarding, interesting custom GPTs which say, put this story in 6 frames, put this story in 4 frames. I still don't exactly like the output that it generates, but different people are thinking about it. So it's not that far-fetched that this time next year, we might already have those things in place. So great. Last question. I know we're running out of time now, which is, uh, UXReactor has worked with a lot of companies that have intentions of left shifting, that have engaged with UXReactor for many of those discovery and definition activities. When they are successful, can you talk in generic terms some of these examples? What type of activities get done? What outcomes are that the customers see value in? We certainly don't have to name customers, but when it happens, uh, what activities get done generally?
Yeah, before I answer that question, Kuldeep, I think it's important to understand that this is a multivariate problem, right? So it needs to have the right people, the right process, the right mindset, and the right environment, right? So many organizations first realize that that is the biggest, I would say, antibody to this particular shift. So because if people are not trained to go and do generative research, you're not going to have generative research. You're not going to be able to deliver that. A mindset of rapid iteration, rapid experimentation, all those things are kind of where it is. Now, what happens in a good organization is they constantly are asking the why questions. They constantly are asking the how questions, so and rapidly experimenting around that. They have an army of ideas and backlogs. It's not a backlog of what you're going to go in the agile sprint. The backlog that goes before, and even a sprint zero happens. Like we did a workshop, in fact, more recently with HR company. came out with 130 ideas, I believe, and finalized around a list of about 16 ideas, which was prioritized based on what are the biggest impact versus feasibility. And those are the things that you now can quickly iterate on. No requirements have been written out, no use cases have been called out, but you've taken those 16 and now you can create storyboards, validate that, see which one people are willing to pay more for. So you can do some level of pricing analysis, and then come back and say, okay, but the good part is a good organization can bring that whole process down in weeks, not months. And I think one more objection that we often get is like, if I'm going to do all that left shift work, then it's going to take a gazillion years. Honestly, no, it takes it literally is takes weeks, and in some cases can take days with the power of AI and so on and so forth. Especially if you're a B2C company, with the power of rapid testing and building concepts can actually be much fun. You can put it on. I mean, you were at User Zoom, so you could put a stimuli today and get feedback tomorrow morning, and that's as powerful. And that was unheard of and during about 10, 15 years back, where you could get rapid feedback. Anyway, I would say that is what starts shifting. They have the right people following this process with the mindset of experimentation, thinking about the why problem. And while you're kind of delivering it, but you have a very good understanding of why you're solving the problems and which problems to go after, and validating it before you spend the engineering resources. And when we have seen that work, it's a very healthy organization, because you're never reacting to like, oh, they shipped something, they shipped. You know why you're shipping something, not shipping something. You know which customers to go after. One of the things that one of the companies that we work with, I'll just share last point, is they identified a whole new product line because they found users using it in an unintended way. And they're like, yeah, how can we go and build this? And we are like, yeah, you should at least try that. I said, okay, can we build a prototype around that? And we can go and talk to this net new customer that we did not think was a customer. And then there you go. I mean, that's a start of $1 billion opportunity without really even thinking through that. Because they asked the why question of who's using it and why are they using it, that allowed you to kind of go through that, decision tree. Again, these are all fascinating things and makes us be very excited about our line of work.
Awesome. There's few more questions. I know we'll run out of time, and so if there are any unanswered questions, we'll put together an article. Actually, there is an article on our website called "Why Left Shift," and it actually goes through some of these examples and the why. So the last question I'll take from the submitted questions so far is this challenge around getting the buy-in, budgets, leadership pushback. I think we spoke about it in general terms, but assuming that the UX community wants to left shift, understands what skill sets are needed, they might still need some help with convincing. I mean, hey, I'll make a plug. Invite UXReactor in. We have done this long enough to know how to talk to executives to be able to convince. But any parting last tips, tricks on what will work to get over that pushback?
Again, you don't know what you don't know, and if you try it, you don't know how it's going to play out, right? So I always say everyone wants to get fit. Everyone's struggling to get fit in terms of like, should I go diet? Should I go exercise? Should I sleep? Is it hormones? Is it tablets and medication? Whatever that is. But you have to try it before you know what works for you, right? Just going and taking what everyone else is doing, which is going to the gym, and in our version, it's like going and hiring 5 UX people and saying that I'm now user centered. It's not going to work. So you have to see what adjusts. You experiment around it, work around it, and talk to other people, other organizations. I mean, there is a reason why, I say that Apple is the most valuable company, or now not anymore with NVIDIA coming in, but now Apple was the most valuable company for the most. But in comparison, you look at Samsung, which does everything that Apple does and more, but still was, at least a year back was about a tenth of what Apple was. And that is where you start realizing the power of experience, the power of understanding the ecosystem and designing around it, and power of delight. And obviously with delight comes loyalty. So all these things kind of kick in, but and organizations have figured it out, and they are able to kind of drive the value there. And so now, if you want your organization to do that, or you to be part of that story for your organization, then effectively that's the shift that has to happen. And I very carefully use the words that this profession is in adolescence. So when it matures, we define how it matures because we are in this path of its maturation.
Yeah, perfect. My last parting thoughts would be, yeah, right now, right? Exactly the same thing. Start small, find a key leader. There's always people within a large organization that just tend to be more customer centric, that have this empathy for designers, researchers, have empathy for customers. Find your key stakeholder, come up with a success story, and to reiterate what Satyam said, once the wider organization sees it, once you are able to show them, not just tell them, they like it, they are going to ask for more. The revolution might not happen overnight. It might be a slow thing, but when it happens, it happens really fast. So best of luck with your left shift efforts. We are wrapping up this year being fairly happy and energized with the amount of work that UXReactor did in 2024. We're super jazzed and excited about 2025 because we know there's a whole lot of problems in this world that need to be resolved. I usually joke there's no shortage of poorly written software out there, AI or otherwise. I encounter a whole bunch of websites and apps and banking apps which are just far, far, far away from what I would consider ideal experiences. And so the world needs a lot more beautifully designed experiences that work in a seamless fashion. And so we're super jazzed and excited about 2025. Any parting thoughts, Satyam, before we
No,
wrap up?
no, I think that's well said, Kuldeep. And yeah, we all have job security if we focus on the right jobs to be done.
Yeah, nice. Well said. Thank you, everyone. If there are questions, you can always reach out to us at hello@uxreactor.com, and we're happy to engage further. Thank you.